Ruby Chan stood just beyond the grand entrance of the ballroom, her fingers lightly clutching the cream-colored invitation that felt both significant and fragile in her hand. The chandelier's glow spilled onto the polished marble floor inside, where elegantly dressed guests mingled, laughter and soft classical music blending into an alluring evening ambience. She adjusted the delicate pearl necklace at her throat and glanced up at the towering facade once more, reminding herself why she was here: to support a cause that had become close to her heart. Her smooth black hair was gathered into a neat bun, and her tailored emerald green gown hugged her frame gracefully. To an observer, Ruby looked every part the distinguished benefactor that the invitation suggested she was. But before she could step fully inside, a brisk woman approached. The woman's sharp heels tapped impatiently as she spoke without looking Ruby in the eye. "You'll have to wait outside," the event planner said curtly, her voice clipped and dismissive. "We don't have enough staff inside right now, so you, and others like you, need to hold off until further notice." Ruby's eyes narrowed slightly, confused by the assumption, the phrase, "others like you," hanging heavy in the air, implying she belonged to no distinguished group within these walls. She opened her mouth to clarify but was cut off by the planner's distracted glance toward a cart being pushed through the corridor. "I'm sorry?" Ruby asked calmly. "We're busy." "This isn't the time," the planner said, motioning toward the heavy double doors behind Ruby. "Wait just outside here, please." As the doors closed softly behind, Ruby took a breath, steadying the mixed flicker of disbelief and restrained resolve that rose in her chest. She was no stranger to people seeing past her, and tonight, she was determined to change that. Ruby lingered just outside the ballroom's ornate doors, the muffled symphony of conversations and clinking glasses floating to her ears from within. The grand chandelier's light seeped through the frosted glass, throwing ghostly patterns over the polished stone beneath her feet. She adjusted the folds of her emerald gown, trying to stay composed amid the swirling confusion settling in her mind. The invitation she held wasn't a mistake. She was unmistakably one of the largest donors of the evening, a fact she had confirmed herself only days prior in a private conversation with the fundraising coordinator. Yet here she was, shuffled aside, mistaken for someone who belonged to the catering staff. A sliver of frustration wove through her calm exterior. But Ruby had learned early on that disruption rarely came from the corners of confrontation. Instead, she positioned herself quietly where people couldn't ignore her presence so easily. Her gentle footsteps moved her slightly forward as the weight of assumptions pressed down like an invisible barrier between her and the glittering event. Near the entrance, several staff in crisp black and white uniforms moved briskly. Ruby caught a waiter's glance hitch in surprise as he passed, likely noting the incongruity of her poised stance and the odds they had stacked on her. A group of guests clustered near the doors, their laughter tinged with casual remarks that drifted toward Ruby like unwelcome breezes. "Oh, looks like they brought another server," one man said, a faint smirk playing on his lips. Another woman nudged her companion, whispering with raised eyebrows that subtly conveyed her own disbelief. Ruby's heart pinched as she heard snippets of the undercurrent judgments. She hesitated for a moment, the ache of dismissal whispering urgently in her ear, but she stayed still. Pride and logic warred within her. It wasn't the rejection that wounded, it was the invisible weight of invisibility that accompanied it. Gradually, the first few guests noticed Ruby, some with only a flicker of surprise, others with tentative recognition. An older gentleman's eyes widened briefly, while a middle-aged woman stopped mid-sip and studied her for a moment. Their recognition was faint but present, an unspoken acknowledgement that something was amiss with how Ruby was being treated. Inside, the event planner moved with her standard brisk efficiency, directing staff and checking details. A few minutes passed, and she returned near the door, her eyes catching sight of Ruby again. This time, there was no pretense of ignoring her. The planner's face tightened for an instant, betraying a flicker of guilt or irritation, but she reinforced her posture with a cool smile. "Miss Chan," the planner said carefully, "we're just finalizing things for the evening. Please remain just outside for now, and I'll let you know when you can join the guests inside." Ruby inclined her head once, her voice holding a calm steadiness as she responded, I understand, but I was invited as a guest, not as part of the service staff. The planner hesitated, the casual chill of dismissal giving way to a conflicted edge. I'm sure you understand the complications of the event. We need to keep things running smoothly. Ruby exhaled slowly, the words heavy in her chest. She didn't want to create a disturbance, and more than anything, she wanted to avoid the uncomfortable spotlight of conflict. Yet the quiet injustice grated against her. As the room hummed on, a waiter reached toward the refreshment table, nodding subtly toward Ruby as if signaling to the invisible barrier that circled her. She met his glance with a faint smile, an unspoken thank you for his silent acknowledgement. Near the entryway, a couple passed by, their conversation overheard by Ruby. I didn't realize she was a donor. I thought she was, the man faltered, eyes briefly meeting Ruby's before he looked away. My mistake, the woman muttered sheepishly, turning away with a slight flush. Ruby's thoughts drifted inward, the echoes of so many such moments in her life filling the space. Invitations ignored, assumptions made based on appearances, her accomplishments not given their due weight. Yet she was here, present, invested. Time dragged onward, marked only by the waxing and waning murmur from the ballroom. She noted the thrumming energy of preparation, the final touches to decorations, hushed instructions between staff, and the anticipatory tightening of the crowd. Moments later, the event planner re-emerged, her face a mixture of apology and resolve. Miss Chan, I need to inform you of an update. Your name will be announced as the largest donor of the evening. Please be prepared, there will be a moment for you to come forward. Ruby's lips curved into a small but genuine smile. She nodded, feeling the tension loosen slightly from her shoulders. Here, at least, her contributions would be recognized publicly. The thought fueled a quiet satisfaction and an undercurrent of anticipation. Still standing just outside, she noticed some attendees catching sight of her again, their gazes laced now with different hues, curiosity, surprise, recognition. Some whispered among themselves, glancing to the doors, their assumptions beginning to shift like shadows in the light. Cautiously, Ruby allowed herself a moment to breathe more deeply. Her patience and restraint had carried her this far tonight, and she resolved to remain steady in the moments to come. Yet beneath the calm exterior, her heart threaded with anticipation. Would the evening's revelation, the public acknowledgement of her role, change what others had long mistaken? Could a single announcement undo the quiet but persistent assumptions about who she was? Outside, the last vestiges of twilight faded as the ballroom's door edged open, and a faint chord of music rolled out into the corridor. The voice of the host boomed briefly through the decor, Ladies and gentlemen, your attention please. Ruby straightened, the invitation still secure in her palm, the moment she had long waited for now closing in. The evening was about to unfold, and with it, the chance to step fully into the light. The soft murmur of voices inside the ballroom faded into a sharply punctuated silence as the host's announcement resonated through the room. Ruby stood near the entrance, the polished marble cool beneath her feet, her emerald gown catching the glow of the chandeliers above. Her breath was steady, but her mind drifted back to the long journey that had led her here, one marked by quiet battles and self-doubt that no gala invitation could erase. Years ago, as a young woman navigating university life, Ruby had found herself questioning whether she belonged in circles dominated by those who looked nothing like her. Raised in a modest household, she poured herself into her studies and community work, never expecting that one day her efforts would place her among the city's leading philanthropists. Yet the weight of assumptions, the heaviness of invisible barriers, had never quite left her. As the expectation mounted inside, the event planner reappeared by the door, clipboard pressed to her chest, eyes darting between the room and Ruby. Her face bore a tight smile, an attempt to mask discomfort, perhaps guilt, but more so a hint of professional tension. She cleared her throat softly, her voice too bright to be truly comforting. Miss Chan, due to some last-minute changes, we're going to delay the announcement for a few minutes. Please bear with us. Ruby nodded, a flicker of disappointment settling in. The unexpected stall left her standing alone amid the bustling event's periphery, a spotlight's edge brushing against her as guests whispered in intrigued anticipation. Some gazes lingered a little longer now, a mix of disbelief and curiosity coating their looks. She watched as the planner moved away, whispering instructions to staff with quick, urgent gestures. There was a subtle unease in the air, as if the mistake the planner had made was slowly pressing to the surface. Struggles with the narrative of who belonged were tightening like an invisible noose. Ruby's chest tightened. She could see the delicate dance unfolding, the attempt to reconcile appearances with reality without admitting to previous oversight. She glanced down at her hands, folded calmly before her, reminding herself that this was her moment. She had earned this moment. At that moment, a soft tap on her shoulder drew her attention. It was a waiter, the same young man whose glance earlier had signaled his quiet acknowledgement. "Miss Chan, the program's running behind, but everyone's eager to hear your part," he said quietly, his tone respectful. There was a subtle kindness in his eyes, a silent apology of the kind words unspoken by many. Ruby smiled gently, her resolve deepening. The wait was incidental, the recognition was what mattered. She gave a small nod. Behind her, the ballroom's ornate doors opened briefly, casting a warm glow out onto the hallway. Voices murmured excitedly, snippets of speculation sniffed through the crowd as eyes occasionally flicked toward her. Some guests who had moments ago looked through her now regarded her with an uncertain expression, their manner softening, walls lowering in slow, hesitant steps. Yet the event planner was not yet ready to fully release the moment. Passing close by Ruby once more, she spoke with a voice quieter this time, tinged with an edge of defensiveness. "Miss Chan, it's all just a formality now. Please be patient." Ruby's thoughts swirled, the delicate tension between graceful patience and the urge to challenge the slight. She swallowed but chose silence. Tonight was about celebration, not confrontation. Her mind shifted again, reflecting on the moments when she'd first doubted herself. The nights spent questioning whether she truly deserved a seat at tables reserved for society's elite. The whispered judgments that accompanied her Asian heritage, subtle, and yet insider to a pervasive bias that cloaked expectations like a shadow. But she had pressed on, raising funds, building connections, and giving back without fanfare, all while learning to muster an unshakable confidence that no assumption could undermine. Now, draped in her elegant gown and poised for recognition, she wondered why some people still saw only what they wanted to see. Why did appearances so often overshadow substance? And yet, the shimmering room held other truths too, a slow but steady shift in perceptions. The silence stretched. Then, a sudden flicker, lights dimmed just enough to spotlight the stage, and brief sounds of technical equipment humming to life signaled the approaching moment. The ruler of the evening's orchestration stepped up to the microphone to ready the announcement. But the microphone emitted a shrill, distorted squeal before falling silent again. A brief murmur of confusion rippled through the gathered crowd. Behind the scenes, technicians scrambled, hands flying over controls, faces taut with urgency. Ruby could see the whole scene unfolding like a play she was both star and audience to. Temporarily stalled, the tension mounted like a drumbeat to an approaching crescendo. The event planner exhaled sharply, eyes flashing toward Ruby with a mixture of impatience and embarrassment. She advanced toward Ruby once more. "Miss Chan, I'm very sorry about all this," she whispered, voice low yet edged. "We'll have to ask you to remain on standby just a moment longer. This technical issue is unexpected." Ruby met the planner's gaze with steady eyes. "Of course," she said softly. "I understand." Despite the soft words, inside her, the slow burn of unresolved frustration grew. Not anger, but an aching clarity about the always invisible walls she faced. As the technicians tried once more to reset the sound system, Ruby stepped back slightly, a sudden urge to gaze out a nearby window drawing her attention. The city skyline stretched beyond, lights twinkling defiantly, just like her hopes tonight. The murmur of the crowd swelled again, the audience growing restless but curious. Whispers now attempted to fill the silence. Some expressed doubt, others whispered admiration. A few exchanged looks as if re-evaluating everything they'd assumed about her standing. Ruby caught sight of a familiar face, a close friend and fellow benefactor, who approached quietly, offering an encouraging smile and a small reassuring nod. It was a reminder that she wasn't alone, even if the path remained uneven. Sometimes, her friend murmured, people are slow to see what's right in front of them. Ruby allowed herself a brief sigh, heart steadying. She glanced once more toward the stage where the microphone sat silent, the moments still suspended in limbo. And then, somewhere deep inside, a quiet determination gathered itself anew. Tonight was not about proving them wrong with words. It was about letting her presence, patience, and grace speak louder than any announcement could. The crowd's restlessness grew, anticipation threading through their uncertain gazes as they awaited the final act of recognition. Ruby's mind turned to the question, how would the room receive her when her name finally echoed through the halls? And with that, the delicate pulse of hope beat stronger, just beyond the rising tide of tension. Stay with us to see how Ruby's story unfolds. The ballroom lights softened until only a gentle, ambient glow remained. The polished wood floor mirrored the shimmering reflections of crystal glasses and sequins. The air held a mix of anticipation and curiosity, thick enough to brush against skin. Ruby stood poised near the entrance, her emerald gown catching the subtle light, the fabric flowing like liquid silk as she shifted her weight from one foot to the other. Her fingers unclasped nervously, then rejoined with practiced calm. Inside, the host's voice cut through the muted chatter as the sound system finally hummed to life, the technical delay resolved. Ladies and gentlemen, the voice declared, rich and warm, may I have your attention please? The spotlight shifted, a narrow beam slicing through the dimness to illuminate the smooth oak stage that had moments ago remained empty. Voices hushed across the room, guests pivoting their heads toward the source of the announcement. The largest donor of this evening's charity gala is none other than Miss Ruby Chan. The name floated over the crowd like a sudden, crisp note. Eyes widened, conversations paused mid-breath, the ripple of surprise swift and unmistakable. Whispers ignited around the room like a slow-moving flame. Ruby's heart beat, steady yet pounding inside her chest. She stepped forward with quiet certainty as the host continued, voice respectful now and filled with genuine admiration. Miss Chan has been an unwavering supporter of our cause, and her generosity has made a tremendous impact on many lives in our community. The host's eyes met hers briefly, offering a smile of sincere respect. The earlier shadows of doubt melted away like morning mist, replaced by a palpable shift in the room's energy. Ruby walked toward the stage with a composed smile, not triumphant, but proud, a smile that conveyed dignity, resilience, and quiet strength. As her heels tapped softly on the wooden floor, a constellation of eyes followed her path. The very same guests who had moments before dismissed her now gazed with newfound recognition. At the stage's edge, she paused slightly, then moved effortlessly up the steps, the whir of cameras sparking like fireflies in the dimness. The audience held their breath, the space between moments thick with expectancy. Ruby's gaze swept across the crowd, a mosaic of faces, emotions flickering from surprise to respect to reflection. The event planner stood near the back, her posture rigid, lips pressed tight in a thin line. The planner's earlier defensiveness had dissolved into something more vulnerable now, a tentative acknowledgement of Ruby's rightful place. On the stage, Ruby took a quiet breath and faced the microphone. Her voice, when she spoke, was calm but layered with heartfelt conviction. Thank you all for being here this evening, Ruby began, her tone steady and clear. I've spent many years supporting causes in this community because I believe that our shared humanity is the most important thing we can honor. A respectful silence fell as she continued. Tonight, I want to speak about something we often overlook, the power of inclusion and the need to see beyond appearances. It's not just about generosity or donations, it's about recognizing and valuing each other for who we truly are." Her words resonated deeply, the room attentive and still. The earlier judgments, the mistaken assumptions, and the whispered doubt seemed to dissolve, replaced by an openness that stretched through the audience. The event planner's eyes softened, and a small nod of understanding touched her lips. There was no need for a direct apology now. Ruby's presence and words had spoken volumes that any such admission would only echo without impact. As Ruby stepped down from the stage, she was met with subtle but sincere applause, not the boisterous clapping of a spectacle, but the warm acknowledgement of someone seen and respected. Guests approached her with newfound warmth. Some offered smiles tempered with a hint of apology, others engaged in genuine conversation about the causes and the importance of breaking down invisible barriers. One well-dressed woman reached out, her voice earnest. "Miss Chan, your speech was inspiring. Thank you for reminding us of what truly matters." Ruby returned the smile, eyes shining with a quiet gratitude. "Thank you. I believe we all have a role to play in creating spaces where everyone feels valued." Across the room, the event planner hesitated before stepping forward, offering a small, genuine smile. "Ruby, you handled that beautifully. I'm sorry for my earlier oversight. It's clear how much you mean to this cause." Ruby inclined her head gracefully. "I appreciate your words. Let's work together to make sure everyone here is seen for who they truly are." The moment held them both, a silent agreement that something had shifted, a door opening toward mutual respect. As the evening progressed, the atmosphere blossomed into one of collaboration and shared purpose, the gala's mission illuminated not only by the generosity of donations but by the transformative power of recognition. Ruby glanced around the room once more, heart full. Tonight had begun with invisible walls and quiet assumptions, but it was ending with light cast by courage, patience, and the simple truth that worth transcends perception. Remember, true worth always shines through. Share this message. Ruby's words lingered in the warm air of the ballroom, wrapping the assembled guests in a quiet reflection that few expected but many needed. The shimmering chandeliers scattered points of light across the room, now softened by an atmosphere more intimate, more genuine. As she stepped down from the stage, the applause that swept through the room was sincere, measured, not mere formality but recognition born from respect and contemplation. The evening had taken a turn that no one, perhaps not even Ruby herself, had anticipated. The earlier moments when she hovered outside, mistaken for a server or an inconsequential figure in the grand scheme, felt like a lifetime ago. Yet those moments had crystallized something powerful, the resilience required to meet subtle prejudice with grace, and the courage it took to let one's presence rewrite long-held assumptions. Guests began to approach her, some with hesitant smiles, others with eyes that held newfound understanding. A few of the women whose whispers Ruby had overheard now sought her out to engage in sincere conversation, their voices tinged with apology without words directly spoken. One young man, who had earlier glanced at her with brief, dismissive disbelief, stepped forward tentatively. "Miss Chan, I didn't realize. Thank you for your generosity and for your speech tonight. It's important, what you said." Ruby regarded him with a gentle nod, acknowledging the small but meaningful shift. "Thank you. I believe change starts with acknowledgement." The event planner, who had spent much of the evening in a mix of professional anxiety and personal regret, joined the circle surrounding Ruby. Her demeanor had softened considerably since the awkward exchanges near the door. "Ruby," she began, her voice earnest, "I want to apologize for my earlier mistake, assuming your place here without properly knowing who you are. It was unfair, and I hope you'll accept my sincere regret." Ruby studied the woman's face, noting the vulnerability beneath the polished exterior. With a graceful smile, she replied, "Thank you. That means a lot. What matters most is how we move forward, together." The event planner's relief was palpable, and she nodded. "Absolutely. I'd like to invite you to serve on next year's planning committee. Your insights would be invaluable." This invitation was more than ceremonial, it symbolized a crossing of boundaries, an opening of doors once thought closed. Ruby straightened, the weight of the evening's journey settling into a quiet pride. Over the following hours, discussions and laughter flowed more freely. The gala's purpose, the celebration of generosity and community impact, remained at the forefront, but beneath it now beat an undercurrent of empathy and connection. Barriers had been nudged aside, replaced with a shared sense of possibility. Later, as the night wound down and the last guests drifted away, Ruby stood near the grand entrance once more, the cool night air brushing softly against her face. The city's skyline gleamed ahead, a tapestry of lights and lives woven together by countless stories, each deserving of recognition beyond surface. Ruby's phone vibrated quietly in her clutch. A message from a close friend appeared. "You shone tonight. Thank you for reminding us all to look deeper." A soft smile curved her lips. Turning away from the glow of the ballroom's windows, she stepped into the night, the rhythm of her footsteps steady and sure. If Ruby's story inspired you, leave a comment. If this story moved you, don't forget to subscribe for more heartfelt stories. See you in our next story.